Here is, speaking of centrists and the sort of fantastical world in which they live in. David Gergen, former Reagan aide, I think former Clinton aide at one point, and a wise old gentleman with our old friend Poppy Harlow, right? Here she is again.
Busy day for Poppy.
Talking about the anger and division in politics. And I gotta say, I've had a couple of conversations with people about this civil thing, and I'm just shocked. We have literally 2,000 children who have been essentially kidnapped by the United States government. I mean, and what I mean by kidnapped is this. If you show up on my property with your kid, if you're walking through my property, or let's say even forget walking into my property, you're walking up the front sidewalk to ring my doorbell and ask me to sign a petition, I don't have the right to take your kid away from you. I mean, that's essentially what we've done. Asylum seekers come in, we take your kid from you. The idea that you can be uncivil in light of this, I would only ask, what does it take? At what point does incivility become legitimate in the eyes of the people who would critique it? At what point? If it's never, okay, it's never uncivil. We can take those kids and we can lock them in jails and feed them only 5 days a week. Is that bad enough that it would be uncivil? How about we take these kids, we feed them only 4 days a week, and we ply them with drugs so that they're not yelling about their lack of food? Or how about we don't feed them at all? At that point, is incivility appropriate? Or do we have to wait until, let's say, 10% of them die? Is it appropriate at that point to be uncivil? I want to know, if you tell me that the U.S. government stealing away 2,000 kids from their parents with no mechanism to reunite them, although I don't even think you need that part, but that's the fact. If that does not qualify to surpass the bar of saying, hey, you represent this administration, I don't want you in my restaurant. I don't want to sell you something. If that doesn't pass the bar, I want to know what would. At what point would this program be legitimate or legitimize uncivil behavior? And I will add, too, since we're on the topic, Republicans are very good at this, because in 2012, when a Radford, Virginia businessman, Chris McMurray, who had just opened his bakery, Crumb and Get It, received a visit from Joe Biden's advance team asking if he'd host the vice president for a media event, he said, no, I won't. This guy was brought on stage by Paul Ryan for rejecting Joe Biden.
I've caught a little attention for telling the vice president that though I respect him very much, I would not like to be used as a photo op for his campaign. Nothing personal, but I just happen to disagree with the president and the vice president on a few things.
All right. And so now you could argue, I guess, well, this is different because that was more political and this was just about dinner. But give me a break. Give me a break.
Yeah, being denied dinner is literally the mildest thing these people deserve.
But
it's much better than they deserve.
It is much better than they deserve. And I'm really just curious, where at what point does it become legitimate to have any type of incivility in our politics if this isn't the point? When does it come? Like, what has to happen to those children? And I will say this. You also have to prove to me that when it gets to the point where we're allowed to be uncivil to these people, that we'll be able to do so without bodily harm coming to us.
Yeah, I actually just tweeted a Daily Kos post. This historian found a 1934 New York Times op-ed urging Jews to be civil towards Nazis.
Please.
So there you go.
Somebody, I remember where
at student activism, I think.
Where I saw this joke, but it was two guys who were about to get shot by the Nazis, and two Jews, Murray and Bernie, and they said, "Do you guys want blindfolds?" And Murray said, "Take your blindfold and shove it up your Nazi ass." And Bernie said, "Please, Murray, don't make trouble."
Pretty much.
There you go. So with all of that, how do you argue that it is uncivil for the left, or really anybody? I think you shouldn't have to necessarily be on the left to feel that it's wrong to rip children away from their parents because they're seeking asylum in this country. And particularly when there's a mechanism, a proven mechanism to not do that. How do you justify that position? Well, you have to sort of say, like, this is almost a historical what's happening. This idea of like a restaurant not seating a presidential press secretary. This is almost an ahistorical, and the idea of like people going into a Mexican restaurant and saying shame to the head of Department of Homeland Security. This is almost unprecedented in terms of like civil protest in this country. That's what you'd have to argue. Who in the world could possibly argue that? Oh, I know, David Gergen.
But where are we today?
We're adrift, and the country is very, very much on boil. I think the emotions are running very high on all sides. There are a large number of people on both coasts who think Trump is totally unethical, that he's a moron, all the other kind of epithets one can think about. And there are people in his base who not only are strongly for him, but they're more strongly for him now, and they're fed up with what a press in the left they think has been carping, doesn't give them any credit, whether it's for the economy or North Korea. And gradually, I think both sides have now reached the point where they're so frustrated and so fed up and so impatient for change that this could lead almost anywhere. It is extraordinarily divisive. I cannot remember a time. The anti-war movement in Vietnam, the civil rights movement, in the 60s and early 70s, both of those were much more civil in tone. Even the anti-war movement was more civil in tone, but certainly the civil rights movement among the people who were protesting.
Are you out of your mind? They were much more civil in tone. Are you kidding me? Like when these people had water cannons turned on them, they were not yelling anything. When these people were being shot by National Guardsmen, they were not yelling anything. Well, I mean, the sheer insanity. All of those folks making bombs. I mean, hello? There were bombings.
But they were polite about it.
The left in this country, and I don't know that it would necessarily represent the left today, but the left at that time, the far left, the extreme left, was bombing places with bombs. With bombs.
Like police stations and things.
Yes. Bombs that go boom. Not shame, shame, don't eat here. Not, you're going to have to leave without dessert. It was, I mean, the revisionism here is shocking. And it's really the only way to sort of justify, the only argument that they have to sort of like claim that things are just completely out of control.
Also, like, politics are supposed to be divisive.
Of course.
If we all agreed on everything, there would be no need for elections.
There would be
voting.
Absolutely none.
I mean, I think there's like a bad faith version of this and a dumb faith version. Like the bad faith emphasis on civility is obviously meant to distract us from what's actually going on and move the fight to more favorable terrain for the people who are doing it, make them look like victims. The good faith version is like, oh, hey, we work in Washington. It's a game to us. People need to stop paying attention. People need to stop getting mad so that we can all live nice lives and, like, you know, go out and sing karaoke together or whatever.
We just need to be able to sit
staffers.
down and have a beer at the end of the day.